The shuttle docked at Helix Prime with a gentle shudder, and Moore pressed her face against the viewport like a child seeing snow for the first time. The station was enormous, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that caught the light of 3 distant suns. She had seen pictures during her briefing on Earth, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. "You going to stare at it all day or actually walk off the ship?" Danny Cole asked from behind her. He was grinning that stupid grin he always wore, the one that had gotten him through Marine boot camp and 2 combat deployments without losing his sense of humor. Grabbed her bag and punched his shoulder. "Just taking it in. First humans to attend the Galactic Combat Academy. Seems worth a moment." "Fair enough," Danny said. "But I heard they have real food in the cafeteria, not the paste we have been eating for 6 weeks on this flying tin can." They walked down the ramp together and felt the artificial gravity shift slightly as they crossed from the shuttle into the station proper. The air smelled different here, filtered and recycled but somehow fresher than the shuttle. A customs officer checked their credentials with 4 compound eyes that never seemed to blink. Its mandibles clicked as it processed their documents. "Humans," it said, the translator device around its neck converting the clicks into flat English. "First of your kind. Orientation hall is down the main corridor, 3rd left, then follow the blue lights." Thanked it and they walked into the station. The corridors were wide enough for species of all sizes, and found herself staring at creatures she had only seen in briefing documents. A massive lumbered past, its rock-like body scraping the walls. A group of skittered by on 6 legs, their silvery fur catching the light. 2 warriors stood at a junction, their 4 arms folded across broad chests as they watched the newcomers with obvious disdain. "Friendly place," Danny muttered. "They do not know us yet," said, "Give it time." The orientation hall was a vast circular room with seating arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. Students from dozens of species filled the seats and noticed that they had left the front rows empty. She and Danny found spots in the middle, surrounded by on one side, and a species she did not recognize on the other. A tone sounded and the murmuring stopped. From a side door, a walked onto the central platform with the easy confidence of someone who had never been challenged. He was tall even for his species, nearly 8 feet, with gray skin that looked like weathered stone. His 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. A collection of scars crossed his face and chest, and his yellow eyes swept across the assembled students like a predator surveying prey. "I am Instructor," he said. His voice needed no amplification. "For the next cycle, I will teach you to fight. Some of you will learn, most of you will fail. A few of you will wash out within the first week and return to whatever soft world produced you." His eyes found the humans in the crowd, and felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "This academy has trained warriors for 2,000 years, continued. "We have produced generals, champions, and legends. We do not produce adequate soldiers. We produce the finest combat specialists in the galaxy. If you cannot meet that standard, leave now." No one moved. Made a sound that might have been approval. He gestured, and an assistant brought forward a rack of training weapons. The instructor selected 2 curved swords, one for each of his right hands, and began to move through a series of forms. His body flowed like water, the blades spinning and cutting in patterns that seemed to defy physics, watched with the trained eye of someone who had spent her childhood learning to do exactly what he was doing. "Dual-wielding," said as he finished the demonstration. "The highest form of blade combat. It requires perfect neurological coordination, spatial awareness beyond what most species possess, and years of dedicated training." He set down the swords and looked at the audience. "It is also impossible for any 2-armed species." A murmur went through the crowd. Felt Danny glance at her, but she kept her eyes on the instructor. "Every 2-armed species in this galaxy has attempted to master dual-wielding," said. "The tried for 3 centuries before abandoning the practice. The lost an entire generation of warriors to training accidents. Even with their immense strength, could not coordinate two weapons effectively in combat. He picked up a single training sword and held it up. You will train with one blade. You will master one blade. Those of you with two arms will never hold two weapons in this academy. It is not prejudice. It is biology. Your brains cannot process the information fast enough. Accept this limitation, and you may survive long enough to become competent. Remembered summer evenings in Ohio, the smell of cut grass and the weight of wooden swords in her hands. Her grandmother had stood on the back porch, calling out corrections in Korean while moved through forms that had been passed down for generations. Two swords, always two, moving as one. You have questions, said. It was not an invitation. Keep them to yourself. Tomorrow, training begins. You will report to the main hall at first light. Bring nothing but yourselves. We will provide everything you need. He walked off the platform without another word. The students began to disperse, and Danny leaned close to, "You okay? You have that look." "What look?" "The one you get when someone tells you that you cannot do something." Watched disappear through the side door. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, patient and firm. "The sword is not in your hand. It is part of your hand. Two swords, two hands, one warrior." "I am fine," she said. "Let us find that cafeteria. I could use some real food." But as they walked out of the orientation hall, could not stop thinking about the two curved swords on the rack. She could almost feel their weight in her palms, balanced and familiar. Her grandmother had trained her for 18 years, had just told her it was impossible, had never been very good at believing in impossible things. The first week at the academy broke 3 students. A collapsed during endurance training and was sent home on a medical shuttle. 2 quit after instructor humiliated them in front of the entire class for sloppy footwork, and Danny survived, though barely. Every morning began with physical conditioning that pushed harder than anything she had experienced in the Army. She ran until her lungs burned, lifted weights designed for species twice her size, and practiced falling until her body was a map of bruises. Every afternoon, they trained with single blades under watchful eyes. Was good. She knew she was good. Her grandmother had started her training when she was 6 years old, and by the time she joined the Army at 18, she could move through sword forms in her sleep. But the academy style was different. It emphasized power over precision, direct strikes over flowing combinations. She adapted because she had no choice. "You move strangely," said during the second week. He had stopped in front of her while she practiced basic cuts. "Your footwork is not academy standard." Kept her eyes forward. "I trained before coming here, different style." "What style?" "Korean, my grandmother taught me." Made a dismissive sound. "Earth styles, primitive but occasionally interesting, show me." Hesitated, then shifted her stance. She moved through a basic form her grandmother had called the river pattern, letting her body flow from one position to the next. The single sword felt wrong in her hands, incomplete, but she pushed through. When she finished, was frowning. "You learned this with 2 blades." It was not a question, nodded. "Forget it," said. "Whatever you learned on Earth, it will not work here. 2-armed species cannot dual-wield effectively. Your grandmother taught you a dance, not combat." He walked away before could respond. She stood there for a long moment, gripping the training sword so tightly her knuckles went white. "Hey," Danny appeared at her side. "You okay?" He called it a dance. "He is just trying to get in your head. Classic instructor move." Shook her head. "My grandmother spent 60 years perfecting those forms. She won tournaments across 3 countries. It is not a dance." That night could not sleep. She lay in her small quarters and stared at the ceiling, listening to the station hum around her. Her grandmother had died 2 years before received the invitation to the academy. She never got to see her granddaughter represent humanity among the stars, but her voice still echoed in memory, patient and precise. At 2 in the morning, gave up on sleep. She pulled on her training clothes and slipped out of her quarters. The station was quiet at this hour, the corridors empty except for cleaning drones that hummed past on their endless rounds. The secondary training hall was unlocked. Had noticed it during her first week, a smaller room used for individual practice. She found the weapons rack and selected 2 training swords, their weight familiar and comforting in her hands. For the first time since arriving at Helix Prime, felt like herself. She began with the river pattern, but this time with both blades. Her body remembered what her mind had been forced to suppress. The swords moved in complementary arcs, one defending while the other attacked, then switching roles in fluid transitions. She worked through the mountain form, the wind form, the form her grandmother called the dancing cranes. I knew it. Spun, swords raised. Danny stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and a knowing smile on his face. Damn it, Danny, you scared me. You were not in your quarters, I got worried. He walked into the training hall and leaned against the wall. So this is what you have been hiding. You can actually do it. Lowered the swords. My grandmother taught me, her mother taught her, 4 generations of our family. And you did not mention this because said it was impossible, because I did not want to get expelled before I even had a chance to prove myself. Danny was quiet for a moment. You know he is going to find out eventually. You cannot hide something like this forever. I know, looked at the swords in her hands. I just need the right moment. If I challenge him now, he will dismiss me as an arrogant human who does not know her place. I need to earn respect first. That might take a while. Half the students still think we are a joke. Then I will take a while. She returned the swords to the rack and they walked back to their quarters together. The station was still quiet, the corridors still empty, but felt something had shifted. She was not just surviving the academy anymore. She was waiting for her moment. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. During the day, trained with a single blade and kept her head down. She improved steadily, earning grudging acknowledgement from and quiet respect from her fellow students. At night, when the station slept, she practiced her grandmother's forms in the empty training hall. A student named made things difficult. He was fast and skilled, and he enjoyed reminding everyone that humans were newcomers to galactic society. During sparring sessions, he targeted with particular venom. Your species still thought the sun revolved around your planet when mine was building starships, he said one afternoon, circling her with his blade ready. You do not belong here. Did not respond. She let him attack, reading his patterns, learning his weaknesses. He was fast but predictable. He relied on speed because he had never faced an opponent who could match it. When she finally counterattacked, she moved through a version of the river pattern. Single blade, but the footwork and timing came from her grandmother's teaching. Sword went flying across the room, and its blade stopped an inch from his throat. The training hall went silent. You were saying, asked quietly. She lowered her sword and walked away. Behind her, she heard whispers spreading through the students. The human had defeated. The human was better than they thought. That night someone knocked on her door. Opened it to find standing in the corridor, his compound eyes unreadable. I was wrong about you, he said. About humans, I wanted you to know that. Before could respond, he turned and walked away. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, surprised and strangely moved. Maybe earning respect would not take as long as she thought. But she still was not ready. Not yet. The moment had to be perfect. Closed her door and began planning. The announcement came during morning training. Instructor stopped the session and called all students to the central platform. His expression was unreadable, but noticed tension in the way he held his forearms close to his body. The Galactic Council is sending a delegation to observe our academy, said. High-ranking military officials from 12 species will arrive in 3 days. They fund this institution, and they expect to see results. A murmur went through the students, exchanged a glance with Danny, who raised an eyebrow. I will select students to demonstrate our training methods, continued. If you are chosen, you will represent not only this academy but your entire species. Do not embarrass yourselves. Over the next 3 days, the academy transformed. Cleaning crews worked around the clock to polish every surface. Training equipment was replaced with newer models. Students who had been coasting suddenly found new motivation, desperate to be selected for the demonstration. Trained harder than ever, but she noticed that never watched her during selection drills. He observed even a promising who had joined their class late, but whenever performed, his attention was elsewhere. The day before the delegation arrived, posted the demonstration roster, pushed through the crowd of students to read the names. Students dominated the list. A few made the cut. The was included. Danny's name appeared near the bottom. His name was not there. She found in his office, a sparse room decorated with weapons from a dozen worlds. He looked up when she entered but did not seem surprised. Instructor, I would like to know why I was not selected for the demonstration. Leaned back in his chair, you are not ready. With respect, I have outperformed half the students on that list in every sparring session for the past month. And yet you are not ready. His yellow eyes studied her with something that might have been curiosity. Humans are new to galactic society. The council delegates have certain expectations. Putting you in front of them now would not serve your species well. You mean it would not serve your expectations well? The silence that followed was heavy. Knew she had crossed a line, but she did not care. You think I am biased against humans, said finally. I am not. I have trained warriors from species that your planet did not know existed when your grandparents were children. I evaluate based on capability, not origin. Then evaluate me. I have. You are skilled with a single blade, better than most first-year students, but you hold something back. I see it in your movements, the way you hesitate at moments when your body wants to do something your mind will not allow. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. You are hiding something, human. Until you stop hiding, you are not ready to represent this academy. Left his office without another word. She walked through the corridors until she found an empty observation deck, then stood at the viewport and watched the stars spin slowly past. Danny found her an hour later. I heard, he said. I am sorry. He knows. He does not know what exactly, but he knows I am holding back. Danny stood beside her at the viewport. So, what are you going to do? I do not know yet. They watched the stars together in silence. A transport ship drifted past, its lights blinking against the darkness. You know, Danny said eventually, the demonstration is open to all students. The selected ones perform scheduled routines, but always opens the floor for challenges at the end. It is tradition. Looked at him. What kind of challenges? Anyone can step forward and request to demonstrate a technique. Usually mocks them and sends them back to their seats, but the option is there. Has anyone ever actually done it? Not that I know of, but there is a first time for everything. Turned back to the viewport, but she was no longer seeing the stars. She was seeing her grandmother's backyard in Ohio, the worn grass where they had practiced for years, the patient smile on an old woman's face as she corrected her granddaughter's grip. The council delegates said slowly, they fund the academy. That is what said. So if someone demonstrated a technique they had never seen before, a technique that contradicted everything taught about species limitations, they would be interested. Danny's eyes widened. That is insane. If you fail in front of the entire Galactic Council, you will not just embarrass yourself. You will set humanity back decades. And if I succeed? He did not have an answer for that. The next morning was in the training hall early. She practiced with a single blade until other students arrived, then fell into the routine of a normal training day. But her mind was elsewhere, running through forms she had practiced in secret, calculating timing and angles. That evening, approached her in the cafeteria. "I heard you were not selected for the demonstration," he said. "Word travels fast." Sat across from her uninvited. "I was wrong about humans, you proved that, but I have also watched you train. You are better than what you show." Said nothing. "Whatever you are planning," continued, "I think you should do it. The Academy has become comfortable. Someone needs to remind them that the galaxy is full of surprises." He stood and walked away, leaving alone with her thoughts. That night she did not sneak to the training hall. Instead, she lay in her quarters and visualized every movement, every transition, every breath. Her grandmother had taught her that true mastery happened in the mind before it happened in the body. Tomorrow the delegation would arrive. Tomorrow she would have her chance. Closed her eyes and let her grandmother's voice guide her through the forms one final time. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of two swords spinning in starlight. The demonstration hall was the largest space on Helix Prime, a vast arena that could seat 10,000 spectators. Today it held the 12 delegates of the Galactic Council, their personal guards, and every student and instructor at the Academy. Stood in the back rows with the other non-selected students, her heart pounding against her ribs. The delegates sat on an elevated platform at one end of the arena, recognized some species from her briefings. A massive admiral whose stone skin was decorated with gold inlays. A general whose silver fur had gone white with age. A diplomat with cybernetic enhancements replacing two of its compound eyes. And others she could not identify, representatives of species humanity had not yet encountered. Instructor walked to the center of the arena floor. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the artificial lights, and his 4 arms were bare to display the scars he had earned over a lifetime of combat. "Honored delegates," he said, his voice carrying easily across the vast space. "Welcome to the Galactic Combat Academy. Today you will see the results of our training, the finest warriors in the galaxy in the making." The demonstrations began. Students performed synchronized combat routines, their movements precise and deadly. Warriors showed their speed with blade work so fast could barely track it. The student demonstrated raw power, shattering training dummies with single strikes. Danny performed a solo routine that earned polite applause. Watched him with pride. He had worked hard and it showed. After an hour of demonstrations, returned to the center of the arena, felt her muscles tense. "You have seen what this academy produces," said to the delegates. "Warriors who understand their capabilities and their limitations. We do not chase impossible dreams here. We master what can be mastered." He gestured to an assistant, who brought forward the familiar rack of training weapons. "Some techniques remain beyond certain species," continued. He selected 2 curved swords and moved through the dual-wielding form he had demonstrated on the first day. Dual-wielding requires neurological capabilities that only 4-armed species possess. Every 2-armed species in galactic history has failed to master this art. He finished the form and faced the delegates with obvious pride. "This is not opinion. This is biological fact. We do not teach impossible skills at this academy. We teach excellence within natural limits." Started moving before she realized she had made the decision. She pushed through the crowd of students, ignoring the confused murmurs around her. Danny called her name, but she did not stop. She walked onto the arena floor. Turned to face her, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "Student Moore, return to your place." "You said any student could request to demonstrate a technique," said. Her voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. "I am making that request." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. The delegates leaned forward with obvious interest. "You have nothing to demonstrate," said. "Return to your place or face disciplinary action." "I want to demonstrate dual wielding." The arena went silent. could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "You want to prove me wrong. You think your primitive Earth training prepared you for something that entire civilizations have failed to achieve. I think you have never seen a human try." Another silence, then smiled and saw something dangerous in his yellow eyes. "Very well," he gestured to the weapons rack. "Take 2 swords, show the delegates what humans can do, and when you fail, you will pack your belongings and leave this academy forever." Walked to the rack and selected 2 training swords. They were heavier than the wooden practice blades her grandmother had used, but the balance was similar. She tested their weight, adjusted her grip, and walked to the center of the arena. She assumed the opening stance of the river pattern. Her grandmother called it the crane before flight. Both blades held at angles that looked awkward but created perfect defensive coverage. "That is not even a proper stance," said. He had not moved from his position 10 feet away. "Your blades obstruct each other." Did not respond. She breathed deeply and let her grandmother's voice fill her mind. "Attacked." He moved faster than had ever seen him move in training. His 4 arms became a blur of motion, 2 swords striking while his other 2 hands reached to grab and grapple. This was not a demonstration. This was a real fight. Flowed into the river pattern. Her left blade intercepted his high strike while her right deflected the low one. She spun away from his grasping hands and counterattacked with a diagonal slash that forced him back. The crowd gasped. Pressed his assault. He was stronger, faster, and had twice as many arms. Every principle of combat said he should win within seconds, but was not fighting his fight. She was dancing her grandmother's dance, and in that dance, 4 arms meant nothing. Her blades moved in complementary arcs, one always covering what the other exposed. When attacked high, her right sword blocked while her left found an opening at his side. When he swept low, she vaulted over the strike and brought both blades down in a cross pattern that forced him to retreat. The fight intensified. Abandoned his teaching demeanor and fought like the legendary warrior he was. His strikes came faster, harder, from angles that should have been impossible to defend. Felt herself pushed to the limits of everything her grandmother had taught her. Then he disarmed her right sword. A clever twist of his blade sent the weapon flying across the arena floor. Heard the crowd's reaction, the assumption that the fight was over. She adjusted instantly. Her left blade became both offense and defense, and her empty right hand became a new weapon. She caught his wrist and redirected his strike, using his own momentum to create an opening. Her remaining sword flashed toward his throat. He blocked barely, released his wrist, and dove toward her fallen sword. She rolled, grabbed it, and came up in the crane before flight stance just as blades whistled through the space where her head had been. They faced each other, both breathing hard, saw something new in his eyes, not anger, not frustration. Respect. They came together in a final exchange, blades singing through the air faster than thought. Moved through the mountain form, the wind form, the dancing cranes, each pattern flowing into the next. Matched her intensity, his 4 arms working to find any weakness in her defense. The fight ended with his blade at his throat and his blade at hers. A draw. The arena was completely silent. 10,000 beings held their breath. Then the general began to clap. The sound echoed across the vast space, slow and deliberate. Other delegates joined in. The applause spread through the crowd until the entire arena thundered with it. Lowered her sword and stepped back, did the same. "It seems," he said quietly, "that I was wrong about humans." The applause continued for a long time. Stood in the center of the arena, her arms burning and her legs trembling beneath her. The 2 swords hung at her sides, suddenly heavy now that the fight was over. She had done it. She had actually done it. Raised one of his 4 hands, and the crowd gradually fell silent. The delegates leaned forward on their platform, their attention fixed on the two fighters below. "In 2,000 years of this academy's existence," said, his voice carrying across the arena, "no student has ever matched me in single combat. Not once." He turned to face directly. "Explain, how did a two-armed species develop this capability?" Took a moment to catch her breath. She was aware of thousands of eyes watching her, of the weight of this moment for her entire species. "Humans have practiced dual-wielding for thousands of years," she said, "across dozens of cultures on our world. In the Philippines, they call it kali. In Europe, they fought with sword and dagger. In Japan, they developed a style called ryu." She raised her two swords slightly. "My grandmother taught me a Korean form called. Her mother taught her, and her grandmother taught her mother. 4 generations of my family practiced these techniques." The general spoke from the delegate platform. "But Instructor said the neurological requirements are beyond two-armed species. How do you explain this contradiction?" Smiled slightly. "Humans never got that message." A confused murmur went through the crowd. Continued. "Every species in this galaxy seems to know what is impossible for them. They accept their limitations and work within them. Humans never learn to do that. When someone tells us something cannot be done, we take it as a challenge." She thought of her grandmother, patient and determined, practicing the same forms for 60 years until they became part of her soul. "Dual-wielding is hard for two-armed species. I will not pretend otherwise. It took my family 4 generations to master these techniques. Thousands of hours of practice, countless failures, endless refinement. But we never stopped because someone said it was impossible." Was studying her with an expression she could not read. "Your species is young. You have been part of galactic civilization for barely a decade. How can you develop techniques that older species abandoned?" "Maybe that is exactly why," said. "Older species had time to learn their limitations. They discovered what was hard and decided it must be impossible. Humans did not know what was supposed to be impossible, so we just kept trying until we figured it out." The diplomat spoke, its cybernetic eyes whirring as they focused on. "Are you suggesting that human determination can overcome biological constraints?" "I am suggesting that biological constraints might not be as fixed as everyone believes. Our brains are not fundamentally different from other two-armed species. We just refuse to accept that certain things could not be done." The delegates conferred among themselves in low voices. Waited, her heart still pounding. She had said her piece. Whatever happened next was out of her hands. Finally, the admiral spoke. His voice was like stones grinding together. "This academy exists to produce the finest warriors in the galaxy. We fund it because we believe in its methods, but methods must evolve with new information." He turned his massive head toward. "Instructor, what do you recommend?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he did something I'd never seen him do. He bowed to her, a formal gesture of warrior's respect. "I recommend that we revise our curriculum," he said. "Human techniques should be studied and, where possible, incorporated into our training. We have operated under assumptions that today proved false. It would be foolish to continue ignoring evidence." He looked at. "I also recommend that Student Moore assist in teaching dual-wielding techniques to interested students. She has demonstrated mastery that even I cannot match." The delegates voted unanimously in favor. The next 3 months transformed the academy, found herself pulled in a dozen directions at once. She taught morning classes in basic dual-wielding for students who wanted to learn. She trained within the afternoons, each of them learning from the other's techniques. She worked with academy scholars to document her grandmother's forms, preserving knowledge that had been passed down verbally for generations. Not everyone adapted well. Some students insisted that humans had simply gotten lucky, that dual-wielding was still impossible for proper species. A few instructors grumbled about traditions being abandoned for human novelties, but the demonstration had been seen by too many witnesses to be dismissed. Danny became her assistant in the dual-wielding classes. He was not a natural with two swords, but he worked harder than anyone else and eventually reached basic. "If my ancestors could figure this out," he told students, "so can you." Proved to be a surprisingly talented student. His speed combined with dual-wielding techniques made him devastating in sparring sessions. He developed a friendship built on mutual respect and a shared determination to push past assumed limitations. One evening, stood on the observation deck where she had once questioned her own decisions. The stars turned slowly past, the same stars that had watched countless warriors train and fight and die over thousands of years. Found her there. "You have changed this academy," he said, standing beside her at the viewport. "I just showed what humans could do." "No," shook his head. "You showed what any species can do when they refuse to accept limitations. That is a more valuable lesson than any sword technique." Watched a transport ship drift past, its lights blinking against the darkness. "My grandmother would have liked you," she said. "She always said the best teachers were the ones who could admit when they were wrong." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. They stood together in comfortable silence, two warriors from different worlds who had found common ground in the endless pursuit of excellence. A young student approached the next morning before class. She was holding two training swords awkwardly, clearly uncertain. "Instructor Moore," she said, "I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Why do humans keep trying when everyone says something is impossible? How do you know when to give up?" Smiled and adjusted the student's grip on the swords. "We do not know when to give up," she said. "That is the whole point. Somewhere in human history, we forgot to learn that lesson. So when someone tells us something cannot be done, we assume they are just saying it is difficult. And difficult things can be mastered with enough practice." She stepped back and nodded to the student. "Now show me the first stance. We have a lot of work to do." Through the training hall windows, the stars continued their ancient dance. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, other species were accepting their limitations and working within them. But here at the Galactic Combat Academy, a human woman was teaching the galaxy that impossible was just another word for not yet accomplished. Her grandmother would have been proud.